Hello once again. Welcome to Zephyr's BI and Analytics, where we learn by building BI projects. Today on this channel, I'm going to be walking you through how you can create a concise, effective, and decision-making report for Aurora Bank using Microsoft Power BI and Microsoft PowerPoint. Aurora Bank has been issuing different kinds of cards to their customers over a period of time. The report is going to be looking at the demographics of these customers. We're also going to be looking at the financial health. Next is the transactions that have been carried out using these cards Aurora Bank has issued over a period of time. Then finally, we're also going to be looking at the card details for these cards that have been issued over this period of time. So if it's your first time on this channel, why don't you click on the subscribe button, turn on your notification to always stay updated when interesting projects like these are uploaded on the channel. So to begin, on the video description, you'll find a link to a OneDrive where you'll be able to download the dataset to create this report. So what are we waiting for? Let's open up our Power BI and begin the ETL process to start creating this report. So once our Power BI desktop is open, the next thing we quickly need to do is bring in our data. By now, you should have the data somewhere in your download or desktop, wherever you actually save the data to. Remember, there's a link to a OneDrive attached to the video description where you can actually download the data set you need to create this report. It's an Excel data, so I'll quickly click on Import Data from Excel. The data is currently on my desktop, Aurora Bank folder. You actually have 4 tables, so I'm just going to select the first table, which is the user's data. Select, I'll click on Open. So we currently have 2 tables. We have the user's data, then we also have the dictionary. The dictionary is actually very important in this case because it tells us everything about the columns you have on the user's data. So I'm just going to check the both of them and I'll click on Transform Data. So this will take us to Power Query, where we can then perform any transformation we need to perform on the data set before loading it to Power BI. So we currently have the user's data here. Then we have the dictionary here. So I'm just going to go ahead to bring in the 3 more tables we need to bring in. So I'll just come to New Source, Excel. I'll select the transactions data, click on Open. For the transaction data, we also have 2 tables. We have 2 tables for the transactions data. We have the dictionary and the transaction data itself. So I'm also going to check the 2. I'm just going to check the 2. Then I'll click on OK also. We're currently still in Power Query. So we're in Power Query. So we have 2 dictionaries now. We have one for the user's data and one for the transactions data. That's why you actually see the 2 attached to this dictionary here. So let's just quickly go ahead and bring in the 2 more tables we need to bring in. We have the cards data. I'll click on Open. I'll also check the 2 tables. That's the card data table and the dictionary. I'll just click on OK. Finally, we have one more table to just bring now, and that's the merchants table. That's the one with the merchant code. I'll click on OK. I'll also check the 2 tables and I'll click on OK. Now we have all our data in Power Query. So we can then go ahead to perform any transformation we need to perform on the data. We perform the transformation, then load the data to Power BI. But one thing we'll quickly do before we go ahead, I'll right click on one of the dictionary and say I want to move this to a new group, and I'll call this group dictionary. I'll click on OK. So what I'm going to do next is move all the dictionary we have to the new group. All the dictionary we have, I'll just move them to this new group. So we have our dictionaries here, then we have our data set down here. It's just to maintain order. Now we're going to look at the user's data. The user's data, this is where we're actually going to find everything about the users. We have their user's ID. Like I said, you can check the dictionary, you get to see everything about the users. We have the unique identifier, which is the primary key. We have the current age of the user. We have the retirement age. We have the birth year. We have the birth month. We have the gender, the address, which is the residential address of the user, latitude, longitude, per capita income, yearly income, total debt, credit score, and number of credit cards owned by that user. So let's quickly look at our user and cross-check with our data type and everything. We actually have 14 columns down here. We have the ID, we have the current age, the data type is in number, retirement age is in number, the birth year is actually in numbers also, the birth month. Then we have the gender, we have the address, longitude, latitude, per capita income, okay, yearly income, total debt, credit score, and all. I don't think we need to perform any transformation here. I don't see any transformation we need to perform here actually. Next, we can proceed to the transactions data. The transactions data where everything is happening, all the transactions happened. So we have the ID. This is actually the transaction ID. If you come to the dictionary, this should be talking about the transaction ID. Yeah. For each transaction, there's an ID generated. So we have the transaction ID, the date the transaction was performed. We also have the time. We have the client that performed the transaction, which is the user that performed the transaction, the card which the user used in performing the transaction amount. If there was a chip, then we have the merchant ID, city, state, the zip, the merchant code. Then we're looking at the error. So of course, when there's error, that means that transaction didn't go through. So one thing we'll quickly just do here, one simple transformation, you can actually see that our date and time, they are actually together. We want to look at them separately. So I'll just split this column by right clicking on the date and say, you know what? Okay, I don't have the option to split it here. So I'll just select the date column and I'll come to split column up here. I'll say by delimiter. So I want to actually use space. And I want to use space from coming from the left, and I'll say okay. So this should split our date and our time. So we have the date on its own and we have the time on its own here. So I'll just rename this to date. So we'll know this is talking about date. Then I'll rename this to time. Okay, so we have the date of the transaction and we have the time of the transaction. I think this is just the transformation we're going to perform here. Nothing else to do here. Let's go to the cards data. I'm not sure there's any transformation we need to perform here also. Just check the data type to make sure everything is okay. We actually have the card number. This is just the card number. There's nothing more to it. And what else? What else? We have the expiry date. We have the CVV. We have, okay, if it has chip or not, the number of cards issued. Then we have the credit card limit. So for these two columns, we don't need them. So just select these two columns. We actually don't need them and say remove columns. So this is why you also need to check your data. Then we have the MCC codes. So for the MCC code, we have the ID, then we have the description. I think one thing I did here was, if you look at the description, there are a lot of descriptions here. You have a lot of descriptions, up to 109. So you can actually imagine that you need to visualize the description, because if you come to the data dictionary, look at what the description is saying. Description of the merchant category, e.g., look at what it's saying here: grocery, travel, entertainment, which means we can actually categorize, we can create a more like a subcategory, a sub description for each of the descriptions we have here, more like a sub. So if it's eating places and restaurants, we can actually say this is talking about food. You get, if it's amusement park, carnival and all that, we can actually group it as maybe entertainment or so. So what we quickly need to create a new column. We can create a new column here. I think what I did was I created a custom column, then I added everything I needed to add here. So I'll quickly navigate to my report I created before now. I'll simply come to transform data. Transform data. I want to grab a code I already have here. So I'm going to come to the merchant code. So this is what I did. I created a category. So if I select my category, you can actually see here I added the custom column. So if I click on the custom column, I'll get to see the M query I wrote to create the custom column. So this is the custom column. I'm going to copy this code. I know the code looks really rough, but I'm just going to copy it. There's also a file attached to the OneDrive where you'll be able to see this code. You can easily just copy this code and use it for your own report. So I'll copy the code. I'll navigate back to our new report. So while we're here, I'll just say I want to add a new column. That's a custom column. I'll select the custom column. Then I'll paste the code I copied. So basically what the code is actually doing, I know it looks rough, but what it's actually doing is just an if then else if statement. I'm simply saying if the text contains description, which is I'm referring to the table now, contains this description we have up here, this description we have here. So if it contains the description eating places, let me place it side by side. So if it contains the description eating places, restaurant, fast food, then you can call this, categorize everything you have here as food. Else, if the text contains services, that service station, it contains gas, contains toll, car washes, automotive, and truck, then group all these and call it automotive. That's basically what the code is actually doing. So I'll just rename this to category, right? And I'll click on OK. You can actually go through that code. It's a very simple code. I know it looks a bit much, but it's a very simple code. Like I said, it's attached to a file on the OneDrive for the video description. The OneDrive, you'll find the code there. Just copy. You don't need to stress yourself and start writing the code from scratch. So we already have this here. I'll change the data type to text just to be sure. I'll just change this to text. I think we've done the transformation we need to do here. Then next thing we need to look at is we have 4 tables, right? We have the users data, talking about the users. We have the transaction data that records the transactions that were done. Then we have the card data. No. So let's talk about modeling a bit. When you talk about data modeling, that means within your business, you want to identify the entities within your business. Then you want to talk about the attribute of these entities from which you can now create an entity relationship diagram, which is your data model. So looking at this table, I would pick the transaction table as our fact table. Why? Because the transaction table is the table we have in this data set that records the events that happen, which is the different transactions that happen. It takes note of the transactions that happen, the date, the time. So you can actually see we have a transaction ID, right? That records each unique transaction. We have the date, the time the transaction happened, the client that performed the transaction, and the card that was used to perform that transaction also. Of course, you also have the merchant ID there also. So you can look at it. So I'm looking at the transaction table and I'm saying to myself, the transaction table automatically becomes our fact table. So what I'm just going to do to the transaction table, I'm going to attach, just rename it to say fact transaction data, right? Then for the card data, I'm just going to rename this and say, you know what, this automatically becomes a dimension table, which is dim card data. Then my users also, I'm just going to name my users also to be dim users data. Then finally, for the merchant code, I'm just going to say this should be dim merchant code. So I would select the fact transaction data, right? I would right click and I'll say I want to move this to a new group. Now, I'll create a new group for this and I'll say fact table. Then I'll select my dimension table. I'll also say I want to move this to a new group, and I'll call dimensions table. I'll select OK. So I have my dimensions table. What I'll do is move all my dimensions table to the dimensions table. So now I have my fact table standing on its own on the fact table. I have my dimensions table. I have all my dimensions table on my dimensions table folder. So we're done with the transformation we need to perform in a Power Query. We then need to load our data to Power BI. But before we load our data, like I said, this dictionary, we actually don't need them. So what I'll do is right click on them and say, you know what, I want to disable the load, so I don't get to load this to Power BI. I'll just do that, right click, enable load, I'll just uncheck disable. So once I've done that, I can now go ahead and load our data to Power BI. So I'll come to home, I'll click on close, then close and apply. Now we have our data in Power BI. You can actually look at the data pane here. You actually see that we have the dimension cards data, the MCC codes, the users data, and the transaction data. When you look carefully, you can actually see that you can't find any of the dictionary on the data pane. So while we're here, we'll do a couple of things before we begin our analysis. One of the things we need to quickly do is come to our data model to check on our data model. So we'll check on our data model to identify any issues. So you can actually see that the MCC code is already automatically connected to the transaction data. That's because Power BI was able to detect that, okay, you know what, this MCC code is supposed to be connected to the transaction data we have here. So one thing we need to do is make some of these connections ourselves. Not every time Power BI automatically detects that. So I'll just fix these tables up here. So we have all the tables, then we have the fact table down here. Great, so let's think about it before making our connection. So we have the card ID here, and we have the card table, and of course you have ID here also. So when I select ID and try to link it up, let's see what happens. So you can actually see it's a one-to-many relationship, and I'll simply just save this. Great, so we have our connection between the cards and the transaction. We probably may edit this much more later, but we're good. So now our client ID on our transaction table needs to be connected to the ID on the users. So I'll pick the ID and drop it on the client ID. Then I have a one-to-many relationship also. I'll simply click on save to save this relationship. Great, so we've established the connection to amongst our tables already. The next thing I also want to do is create a new table. That table is also going to be my calendar table. So if you look at our transaction table, of course, we have the transaction date. I will also want to look at the trend. I would want to look at the transaction, the trend of the transaction, maybe on a weekly basis, monthly basis, yearly basis, whichever one I want to do. So I'll need a calendar table to be able to manipulate that. So if you click on the drop down here, you actually see that we have a lot of dates starting from 2022 down to 2024. So I'll quickly create a calendar table, and of course I'll then connect my calendar table to the dates on the transaction table. I already have a measure for that, waiting for that. So one thing I've done is for the measure for the category we talked about before now, that's the M query, it's in a document also. The calendar measure, the measure you need to create the calendar table is also in that document. So you just go there grab the code and create your calendar table. So what I'll do while we're here now is navigate to the report we want to create. I'll come to table view and I'll simply select my calendar table. I'll click on the drop down, then I'll just copy this code just the way it is on my system right now. I'll copy this code. That's calendar. Once I'm done, I'll navigate back to our report. So while we're here, I'd say I want to create a table tools. That's table tools. I want to create a new table. I want to create a new table. That's going to be my calendar table. And I'll simply paste the code I copied. I'll paste the code I copied and I'll just commit this. This automatically creates the calendar table for me. But if you look at the calendar table I created, I manually imputed the date I wanted. So I'll simply just change this from 1991. I'll just change this to 2022. That's because I already know that on the transaction table, the date starts from the year is actually from 2022 to 2024. So this is just a manual input. So once I'm done with that, I'll commit. I'll of course minimize this. I'll select the first column, which is the date column. You can actually see it's in a date and time format. I want it to be on a date format. I'll just come to date and time and change this to date only. Great. So once we're done, I'll then proceed to the model view, right? I'll proceed to the model view. This is actually the calendar table. I'll just bring it somewhere here. Make space, make space. Come on, make space. I'll make space for the calendar table, right? I'll then connect the date on the calendar table to the date on the transactions table. I'll just click, drag, and drop it on the date. So I have a many-to-one relationship. Then I'll go ahead and save this. Great, so we have our model ready to go. I'll navigate back to the report view. Now we can begin our analysis, but before we begin, I always like my measures, my calculations to be on a separate table. So I'll arrange them in a particular order in that table. So whenever I send out my PBIX file, you can easily locate a particular measure if you're searching for it. So to do that, I'll just come to enter data here. While we're on home, I'll just say enter data. I'll call this table whatever I want to call it. I can just call this DAX and I'll click on load. So I have a table that will hold all my DAX measures. All the measures I want to write, they are going to be on this table. I can also group them into different folders. So quickly, before we begin, finally, let's just come to format your page report. Canvas settings, let's change this from 16:9 ratio to custom, and let's give it a height of 1080 and a width of 1920. Great. So with this, I believe we are ready and we can begin creating our report. At this point in time, you can actually save your report so you don't lose it. You can save your report, just come to File, click on Save As, then Browse. You can save your report. I'll just save mine on my desktop, say Aurora Bank, new, and I'll just save. I don't know if we're going to be using Zoom chat. Of course, if you want to try out Zoom chat, of course, you have to go to the App Store to get the Zoom chat visual. Currently, I'm not signed in, so I'll sign in. Then, of course, we'll go to App Store if we need to use Zoom chat visuals, because I actually use Zoom chat visuals to create a report I created. So we are good to go. We're good to go. We are going to ignore the background for now. We're going to ignore the background. We're just going to create the report. Once we're done creating the report, we'll go to PowerPoint. Like I said, we're going to use PowerPoint. We're going to create the background in PowerPoint and, of course, bring it to Power BI and um, add it to our report. So let's quickly look at what we need to start with. First, we're going to look at our clients. Then we're going to look at the male and the female client. We're going to look at their average age, of course, for the male and the female also. Then, of course, we're going to look at the average yearly income, then the max, the mean, then per capita income average, the max, the mean also. So those are the KPI cards we're going to be looking at for demographics. So let's start by creating our demographics page. I'll navigate back to our report for our demographics page. The first thing we need to do is know our total clients. We already have the users data table, which means we simply need to go to the users data table and count the number of clients we have. To do that, I'll then have to create a new measure. Just right click on my DAX table, say new measure. So clients. Now I'm going to use a count because I'm counting from the dimension table. If I'm going to count from the fact table, I should be doing a distinct count. But since I'm counting from the dimension, remember dimension tables, you don't have duplicates for the primary keys. So users, as the users, then the ID, so close the bracket, commit this. So this should give us the total number of clients. Great, so clients, we have 2,000. Let's go to the table view and look at what we need to do next. On the table view, if we look at our users data, so we have the clients, the ID, we've done that already. Then we have a gender column, which means we can then go ahead to count the male client and the female client. So to do that now, we stay on our DAX again, right click, say new measure. I'll name this female client. So this would be, I want to use the calculate function now because I want to select just the female clients. So I'll say calculate, I already have clients, so calculate my client, but I want you to take it down to where you have users and the gender is equal to female. One thing I need to go back and check is to make sure that the female is actually spelled the way we have it here. I have to check that the female is actually spelled the way we have it here. So I'll just select this. I'll quickly navigate back to the table view. On the table view for the users, the gender, so good. The female is actually spelled that way. So we can go ahead and create another one for male. So I'll just make a copy of this. I'll just copy this to be fast. Right click on DAX measure, say new measure once more. I'll paste the code, edit this to male, not female anymore. Then the filter context should now be male, not female also, capital M. I'll check this. So we have the measure for both female clients. We have our female client. We have our male client also. So quickly, let's look at the average age. The average age for both. Generally, let's look at the average age for all our clients. So I'll come to new measure once more again. Now we should be looking at the average age. I don't know why this is taking so long. I just want to create a new measure. Okay, so this should be average age. Then I'll call on the average function. In this case, I'll just say average. Remember, on our users table, we have the age, which is the current age column. So I'll say average age. So with that, I have the average age for each of the clients, for all our clients, whether male or female. So also, I want to see the average age for just male, the average age for just female. So I can go ahead and create another measure and say average female age and average male age. So for that, I can say average. Now it will just be average F age, that's female age. Now we'll use the calculate function once more and say we simply want to calculate the average, right? The average of what? The current age, our user's current age. But we want to look at it when the user's gender, when the user's gender is just equal to female. Remember, the spelling must be correct. So one thing I'll quickly do to be fast, I'll make a copy of this measure I've written now. I'll just copy this measure. Remember, it's a very simple measure. I'll commit this. Okay, my system is a bit slow today. I don't know what's happening. All right, finally, so I'll make one more measure, new measure for the average male age. Remember, we have the average female age already, so we need to get the average male age just for males. So I'll paste what I've copied. I'll just change this from F to M. Then I'll come change the context here, no longer female but male. So we have the average male age, the average female age already. We have both. So the next thing we want to look at is the yearly income. So if you come to table view, on the table view, if you look at our dimension users data, you can actually see that we have what we call the yearly income. This is the yearly income for each of our clients, each of our users, the yearly income. So let's quickly look at the average yearly income. Average yearly income. I'll quickly navigate back to report view. I'll right click on the data and say new measure. So this should be the average yearly income. So I'll just say average yearly income. So this would be average, just average function. And we call on our users. Then we look at our yearly income. So this will give us the average yearly income. Let's go to our table view to make sure we confirm now. We're simply going to confirm our dimension users, the average yearly income. We have to confirm the data type. Okay, the data type is actually in currency, which is fine. I don't think we're going to get any issue with that. So we have the average yearly income. Great. So when we're done getting the average yearly income, we also want to look at, in the card visual as I displayed before now, we want to look at the max yearly income. More like saying, which client has the max yearly income? Then we also want to look at the mean yearly income, the max yearly income and the mean yearly income. That's just looking at the table and saying, on this table, what's the highest value? On that table, what's the lowest value for our yearly income? So I'll just create a new measure for that. Say new measure. We're going to be creating a lot of measures. So this should be, let's say this is max yearly income. Then I'll just call on the max function, right? And I said I want to see the max of our users' yearly income. Yearly income. Just want to see the max value. We also want to see the mean yearly income, the minimum yearly income, which is the lowest yearly income. So we create another measure. Then this should be looking at the mean yearly income, right? So we call on the mean function and say we want to supply our users again yearly income. Okay, great. So we have the average yearly income, the max yearly income, the mean yearly income. We also want to look at the per capita income. We want to look at the average per capita income. If you come to the users data, we want to look at the average per capita income. This is the per capita income. So we want to look at the average per capita income. Then we also want to look at the mean and the max per capita income. So we create measures for that. First, we create a measure for the average per capita income. Okay, so this would be average. I'll simply just see average P income. I'll call on the average function once more. And we want to look at our users per capita income. So this is the average per capita income. So once we have the average per capita income, we also want to write a measure to look at the max per capita income and the mean per capita income. The max per capita income and the mean per capita income. So let's quickly write a measure for the max per capita income. So we'll say new measure. So this would be max P income, and I'll simply call on the max function once more. Just say max. Then we want to refer to our users per capita income, and here we go. Great. Just as we looked at the max per capita income, we also want to look at the mean per capita income, the mean per capita income, the mean per capita income also. So I'll right click and create one more measure. So this would be our mean P income. So we'll just call on the mean function here. And of course, our users, then per capita income. Great. With this, I believe we have all the KPI card we need to create our demographics. For our demographics page, I believe we have all the KPI cards we need already. So let's quickly navigate back to the report. So you can see the KPI cards. We have the clients, we have the average yearly income, the average per capita income, then of course the average age. Then for the average yearly income, you have the max, the mean, the max, the mean. Of course, then you have for male, you have the number of male clients and number of female clients, then the average age for both gender. So we'll go ahead now. What are other things we need to look at here? So this is looking at the total client by age group. This is total client by age group across the two genders. So which means we need to also create an age bucket, because we already know the age of our clients. So which means we need to group them within using a bucket system. So I'll quickly just navigate to our table view here, right? And I'll come to the users. So I'll simply copy the code to create that age bucket. So the code I'm talking about is somewhere here. Great. So we have the age bucket. So I'll just click on the drop down so you can see the code. So basically what I'm saying is, if the age is between 18 and 21, that individual is 18 to 20, between 18 to 20 years. So if the age is between 21 and less than 31, that means that individual is between 21 to 30 years. Just that same principle. So I'll copy this right away. I'll simply copy this. Now I'll navigate back to our report. I'll come to the table view. Next, on the user's data, I'll simply say I want to add a new column. My system is a bit slow today. So the name of the column is going to be the age bucket. So you can see I have a lot of errors here. The reason I have a lot of errors, I can't tell. So we simply just look at it and try to figure it out. So you can actually see that the name of my table is actually dimension underscore users data. So I have to make that correction because the table is not spelled. We don't have same table name here. So I need to make that correction. So this is referring to dimension users and current age. So this is the correct one. So I'm just going to carefully delete this. What I'm going to do next to be fast, I'll just copy this, right? Ctrl C, then highlight, paste, bring this down here, paste, highlight this, and paste, paste, paste. Great, so I have my age bucket ready. So once I'm done, I'll just commit this. So you can see the new column has been created for my age bucket. The first person we have here is between 41 to 50 years. So if we scroll down, let's look. So that very client is actually 42 years old. So one thing I'll do again is when I visualize, I want it to follow a particular order from youngest to oldest or from oldest to youngest. So in order for me to achieve that, I'll simply make a copy of this age bucket, right? I'll make a copy of it again, right? I would say I want to create another new column, but this is not going to be the age bucket anymore. I'll just say this should be age bucket sort. Age bucket sort. That's because I want to be able to sort the age either youngest to oldest or oldest to youngest. So what I'll do for the 18 to 20, I can just say this should be 1. Then I want this then to be 2. This should be 2. The next will be 3. Next will be 4. The next should be 5. Then we have 6. Next we have, and finally we have 7. Great. So this is no longer age bucket. This will be age bucket sort. I'll then go ahead to commit this. So basically what we've done is to enable us sort our age bucket either in ascending or descending order. Practically what I'm trying to say is if I come to report view and I say, okay, you know what? I want to know the total clients by age bucket. I quickly just select one of the visuals and I say, okay, so we have the age bucket and we want to look at the clients. So this is what happens, right? Now you have 18 to 20, greater than 71. If I decide to sort this using age bucket, you see now I can't sort it either from youngest to oldest or oldest to youngest. It's not going to be possible. But if we come back to table view and on the column age bucket, right? On this age bucket, we'll come to sort column and say sort column by age bucket sort. And we navigate back to our report view now. Let's look at that chart, that visual we created. You can actually see that now we can sort it either from youngest to oldest or oldest to youngest, whichever way we want to actually sort this. I'll just minimize this and I'll keep this somewhere here. Just leave it there for now. So now we have the age and the age bucket. There's also something we also need to look at, right? Now, in our data, we have the current age of the person, then we have the retirement age of the person, which means if we subtract the retirement age from the current age, we should get what should be the active years left the individual has left. That's more like active years of service. So we should get something like that. So we're quickly going to create a new column for that. We're simply going to say new column, right? New column. Then we would want to create a column to say active years, more like active years. And this should simply be, this is active years. It should simply be our user, right? That's the retirement age minus our user. The current age, retirement age, we'll subtract that from the current age. We should have the active years for these individuals. So now you can actually see that this individual, the first person, currently have about 20 years left to work. So let's look at it. The current age is actually 42 and retirement age is 70. So of course, we still have 28 years of active service. So the next thing we're also going to do is also create a bucket for the active years. Active years, we need to create a bucket for the active years. So I'll quickly navigate back to the report we're trying to recreate. In order for us to be fast, I'll come to the table view and I'll search for the active years. Active years, active years. Okay, so we have the active years. I need to look for it. So we have the active years here already. So we need to look for the active years buckets. So, okay, yeah. So this is the active years bucket. It's the same principle as the age bucket. Same principle. We're actually applying the same principle. So I'm just going to copy this, right? I'm going to copy this. I'll navigate back to our report now. Yeah, so while we're here, we need to create a new column, right? A new column now to for our active years bucket. I'll simply paste the code I copied. We're using the same principle, the switch function. Of course, the reason I'm having these errors is because the table name is actually different here, is dim users data. So I'll simply correct that. I'll correct that by just editing this dim, then this is users. So we have dim users active years. That's what I want. I'll simply carefully delete what I have here. Great. So once I have the first one figured out, I'll gently copy everything and replace the numbers. So we can do same. I'll replace what I have here. I'll replace what I have here also. I'll replace what I have. Next should be here. Next should be here. Next should be here. Great. So basically what we're saying is if the active years is greater than 0 and is less than, of course, 15, that's 0 to 15. 11 less than 30. Okay, so we need to fix an error here. This is 15 actually. So this is no longer greater than or equal to 11. It's supposed to be greater than 15, greater than or equal to 15. So fix that error. So we have 16 to 30 years. Then of course, if it's greater than 21, so this is no longer 21 actually. It's supposed to be greater than or equal to 31. So greater than equal to 31, this should now be 31 to 45 years. 45 years, so yeah, 31 to 45 years. It's less than or equal to 45. So this is no longer 31, this should be 46. So this will now be 46 to 57 years. So if you can't find it here, basically what we're saying is we've already checked. If you can't find it, because you see some values that are actually, how will I put it now, negative values or so, which means we're trying to say, okay, if you can't find it within this range, that means the person is actually retired. So let's commit this and see what happens. We can easily just inspect to see what happens. Let's commit this. So one thing we'll do is let's quickly check our active years, right? Let's check our active years. So when you check the active years, you see some negative values. That simply means those people are actually retired. They're no longer in service. I think the highest value is 57. That's why we're using 57 for our benchmark. So I'll cancel this. So this has been sorted already. So you can see the active years have been sorted. You can see, of course, you have individuals that have retired. So like we've done before, I'll simply just copy this code again, right? So we can create a sort column for this also. So we should be able to sort it from those that are having less years or more years like that. Just the way we created the active age bucket, that's the age bucket sort. So I'm going to paste this. You can guess what will happen. I'm simply going to say active years bucket sort, right? Bucket sort. This should be the sort column. The next thing we want to do now is just assign the values. This should be 1, this should be 2, this should be 3, this should be 4, okay, and finally this should be 5. So once we have this done, I'll simply commit this. So guess what we're going to do next? We then need to sort the active years using the active years buckets. I'll stay on the active years bucket column, on this column. Then I'll say sort column by using active years bucket sort. So we're going to sort it using this very column next to it. Great. So once this is done, we have some few things we need to cover before we create the first page of our report. So let's quickly navigate to the report we're trying to recreate. I'll simply just navigate to the report. I'll come to the demographics page. It's the first page of the report. So we have everything covered, not everything. So we have the clients, we have the average yearly income, we have our KPI cards figured out. We also have the age distribution figured out. Next thing we need to look at is the income. We need to create a category, more like a bucket for the income group. We need to also create a category for the credit score. I think those are the two we'll take care of, then we'll come back to these two. So if you come to the reports, the table view, that's navigate to table view, and let's look at the income category. Remember, we have the yearly income already. We have the yearly income. So for the yearly income, we want to classify the clients based on their yearly income. We want to also create a bucket for them based on their yearly income, more like high earning clients, middle earning, then low income, which is the low income, high income, then of course middle income. So it's just a simple measure also, yearly income bucket. So it's just a simple measure. It's the same principle we've been using before now. Same principle. So we're going to do the same thing. I'll simply just, of course, copy this code. So we'll be fast. Navigate back to the report. So while we're here, table view. Of course, we're still looking at our users. So I'll say I want to add a new column again. Can't tell why my system is so slow today. We're still working on it, just to add a new column. Great, so I want to add a new column to this data. So this is the yearly income bucket. Remember, I don't have same table name. That's why it's showing this error we have here. So we have the dim users. We are looking at the yearly income. So I should be searching for yearly income. Yeah, yearly income. So once I have this done, it's just for me to copy and distribute. I'll copy this. swap what we have here. So we're also using the switch function. So you can actually see that the switch function is actually a very powerful function in Power BI. So with the aid of this switch function, we are able to also categorize our income, the income of these clients, into low income, middle income, and high income. Of course, this is just to take care of any unknown we have. So we're doing this based on the values. Of course, if it's greater than or equal to 1 and it's less than or equal to 50,000, that's low income. That's less than 50,000 or equal to 50,000. So from those that are earning 50,000 downwards, they're actually low income earner. So those that are earning above 50,000 but it's less than 100,000 or equal to 100,000, those ones are middle income. So anybody earning above $100,000, those are high income earners. So like we've always done, once we have our yearly income bucket created like this, we also need to create a sort column for it. So we'll be able to sort this either by from low to high or from high to low. So I'll simply just grab this code. I'll commit this. I'll commit this. Then I need to create one more column, just one more column to classify. No, not to classify now, to sort actually. Remember to sort, not to classify. Okay. Taking a little time. So I'll just paste the code. Remember what I need to do is just to change the low income to 1, the middle income to 2, this to 3, this to 3, this should be 3. Now for the unknown we can actually it's up to us. We can decide to leave it, right? We don't want a situation. We can decide to leave it or just go ahead and add 4 just in case. It's fine. We can leave it out or just add 4. So we leave it, add 4 to that, whichever one. Yes, we need to rename this to yearly income buckets. Then this should be the sort also. So I'll commit this right away. Great. So what I'm going to do next is stay on the yearly income bucket, right? Say I want to sort column and I want to sort it by the yearly income bucket sort. Next, we have a column that talks about the client's credit score. Of course, you know before now, before you get a credit, before you get any kind of card, you should have a credit score already, which is more like if your credit score is high, of course you're good. If it's low, you're not so good. So we have the credit score here, right? We have the credit score column for each of the clients. We have their credit score. So we can't visualize this credit score the way it looks. So, you know, we have clients that have excellent credit score. Their credit score is excellent. Some are not so good. Some are okay. Some, of course, with that credit score, they can actually get a loan. So I'll quickly navigate back to our report and grab the credit score category, what we use in categorizing the credit score. So I'll search for that credit score category. Yes. So we have the credit score category. So this is how it's categorized. The same principle using same switch function. I'll simply just copy this code once more. So the credit score is actually calculated from poor, fair, good, and excellent along that line. So I'll navigate back to our report, right? I'll say table view once more. We are still on the users table. Remember, everything we're doing right now, we're doing it on the users table. I want to add a new column again. So this is actually credit score category. Remember, we don't have the same table name, so I'll simply just delete this. This is talking about our users, but it's looking at our credit score. So I'll look for credit score. I'll simply just copy this and replace everything we have here. Replace what we have here. Replace what we have here. So a quick explanation to this code. We're simply saying if the credit score, of course, if it's less than 650, right, it's poor. So anything less than 650 is poor. If it's greater than or equal to 650 is fair. If it's greater than or equal to 700 is good. If it's greater than or equal to 750 is excellent. So if you have 650 downwards, that's a poor credit score. If you have between 650 and 700, that's between 650 now and 7 and 6 no, that's 699. That's actually fair. Then if you have from 700 to 749, that's good. Then from 750 upward, of course, that's excellent. Remember, like we've done before, we also need to make a copy of these to create a column to sort. I can't actually think if there's a better way to actually go about the sorting, because you actually need the sorting to make the data more presentable, so you can actually view the data from a simple perspective, from good to bad or bad to good. So once we have the credit score category, we then go to create our new column for the credit score category sort. So we want to sort the credit score from good to bad or the other way around. So this can be 1, right? Like we've always done. This should be 1, then this should be 2, this should be 3, this should be 4, and finally this should be 5. So this is no longer category. We can just say this is sort, and we'll commit this. We'll commit this. So next, I'll stay on the credit score category, right? I'll stay on the credit score category. I'll say sort column, and I'll come to say sort by credit score sort. Great. So the next thing we need to look at is the debt to income ratio. The debt to income ratio. So I referred to that as the more like the DTI, debt to income ratio. It tells us the current debt the individual has compared to looking at it towards the income, the yearly income of that individual. So the debt to income ratio. So we're going to create a new column to calculate the debt to income ratio. So I'll simply say new column now. So to calculate the debt to income ratio, remember that I'll just simply call that DTI. Remember, we have the total debt for this individual, and we also have the yearly income of the individual. So we should be able to calculate the debt to income ratio by simply saying, you know what, we want you to divide, right? Our team users want you to divide the total debt. So let's look for the total debt. This is the total debt. Divide the total debt by the yearly income. Yearly income. That's the yearly income. So once you divide the total debt by the yearly income, so this is going to appear in a percent format, but I don't want this to appear in a percent format, so I simply want to cancel it. I want it to appear in a value form. So I'll just simply say, you know what, I want to multiply this by 100. It doesn't change anything in recent. So I'll hit my enter button. So this is going to calculate the debt to income ratio. Debt to income ratio. So we're actually having a lot of zero values there, right? We're seeing some zero values. So let's see what happens. For the first person, we're actually seeing a zero value. So one thing we can confirm is, let's look at the debt of this individual and the yearly income of this individual. So for the first person that we're getting zero value, the total debt, now look at the total debt, is actually 0, which means this person doesn't have any debt at all. That's why you're not having the debt to income ratio is actually 0, because the person is having, the individual, which is the client, is having a yearly income of $41,997, but as of this moment, there's zero debt. That's why you're actually seeing that the debt to income ratio is actually zero. So one thing we can actually do is create a bucket again for the debt to income ratio. Now, the implication of the debt to income ratio is interpreted in a different form. If you have a high debt to income ratio, it simply means it's bad. It means it's not good. It simply means the amount your yearly income, right? Your debt exceeds your yearly income. Your debt currently exceeds your yearly income. So let's quickly look at what I'm trying to say. So we have from zero. So let's pick a high debt to income ratio. That's DTI. Let's say, okay, this is 150, right? Let's pick this 150. Let's pick this 150. Great. So let's investigate what this person is earning and the current debt. Now look at the problem. This individual is earning $115,362. No, it's currently owing actually $115,362. That's what this individual is owing. But the individual's yearly income is just $76,000, right? So the debt already exceeds the income. So it's having a high debt to income ratio, which means it's bad. It's bad. It's not good. So the lower debt to income ratio you have, the better. So if you have a debt to income ratio of 0, for example, which means you're not owing, that's why you're having a debt to income ratio of 0. So we're going to create, like we've done before, we're going to create a bucket for that. So I'll just clear all filters. So let's quickly create a bucket for this and see. So while we're here, I'm not going to copy this time around. So let's just create a bucket ourselves while we're here. And we'll simply say new column. We want to call this the DTI category, right? We want to call this the DTI category. So this is going to be the DTI category. And I'll simply say, we're also going to use the switch function. I'll simply say, I want you to switch, right? This should be true. Okay. And finally, our condition. So I want to say if our DTI, which is the debt to income ratio now, the DTI, right? If it's less than 30, this is actually low risk. If it's less than 30, this is low risk, right? Now, if the DTI is greater than or equal to 30 and also the DTI is less than 50, we want to say this is manageable, right? We want to say this is manageable. Next, if the DTI is greater than or equal to 50 and DTI is less than 150. So less than 150, this is actually I think in a real life scenario, it's not possible. But for the sake of this data, we're just saying, okay, you know what? If it's less than 150, we're giving you room. Less than 150 simply means, okay, you can be earning 50,000 and we also give you about, you can be earning 50,000, yeah, $50,000 yearly. At the same time, you have room to owe, let's say $70,000 yearly. That's what we're simply saying. This is the risk. This is risky. That's the border. We're drawing it. That's the borderline. Just because we want to say, okay, you know what, we want to give you a little time. We want to allow you to get some more money, even though your yearly income exceeds that. So we want to say this is risky and it's the border. I don't think this is going to happen in real life though. So we want to say the DTI now, right? If is greater than greater than or equal to 150, and the same DTI is less than 190, then this is, just say this is high risk. This is high risk. That's what we're saying. This is high risk. Then any value above 190, that's just severe risk. It's practically no. But we currently have clients like that, so we're trying to say for these clients, their debt to income ratio is actually very severe, on a severe risk right now. That's what we're categorizing them. So this automatically fixes our debt to income ratio. Once we're done with this, remember what we need to do next. We also need to create a sort column to sort this from maybe low risk to severe risk, or severe risk to low risk. So I'm just going to make a copy of this code. Then I'm going to commit this. So once we have this sorted, this is actually low risk. So once we have this sorted, the next we need to create a new column again. New column. I'll paste the code, right? Then we can now say this is no longer low risk. This is 1. This should be 2. This should be 2. This can be 3. This can be 4. Next, and finally, this should be 5. So with this, we can sort our debt to income ratio. So I need to rename this. Sorry. So this needs to be DTI sort. Now click on commit. Great. So now we need to stay on our DTI category and say we want to sort column, sort it by DTI sort. So we can sort it from low risk to high risk. Now finally, for the final visual, the last visual we had in our report, let's quickly navigate to the report and I'll show you that. So this is actually looking at the risk score. So we have the total client by overall loan risk score category. So we have the risk score, of course, high risk, low risk, moderate risk. So this is looking at a lot of factors, right? So when you decide to apply for a credit card, there are some factors that will be put in place, that will be considered before giving you that credit card, before giving you that particular loan. So those are the factors we want to look at to calculate the risk score. The risk score is generally just looking at what is the percentage chance that you will be able to pay this money back. So it's more like coming up with a simple model using the factors you want to consider and say, okay, what's the chance that the loan we're giving to this individual with this credit card, what's the chance that this person would be able to pay this loan back? That's basically what we're looking at here. So to get it clearly, let's come to table view here and say we want to create a new column. We'll then identify the factors we want to consider, right, to calculate this risk score. But the risk score is going to work this way. Out of 100% chances, 100% being you are sure you'll be able to pay this loan back, right? What are the chances that you'll be able to pay this loan back? That's what the risk score is looking at. So if you are having a risk score of 10, yeah, it's low. It simply means your chances of paying the money back is really low. You're practically not going to pay it back, because there's always a threshold. There's a threshold. They can say, okay, you know what? For individuals having a risk score of 70% and above, those are the people who want to give the loan to. Those are the people we'll give loan to. If you're having less than 70, we don't want to give you the loan because your chances of returning the money or being able to pay the money is less than 70%. So it's more like a caution. So what are the factors we're going to be considering to calculate this risk score? So we want to calculate the risk score. What are the factors we're going to be considering? One of the factors we're going to be considering is your credit score. So if you have a good credit score, right? If you have a good credit score, you have a chance of getting the loan already. So we say your credit score. So what we're basically trying to do with this measure we want to write, we simply want to try and mimic a model. We want to create a model. We want to identify the variables we want to consider, the factors we want to consider, assign a weight to them, and automatically use this way to calculate a risk score. So the first factor we want to look at is your credit score. So if you have a high credit score, you're good. If you don't have a high credit score, now the credit score is just going to contribute a part to your overall score. I don't know if you get, yeah, it's going to contribute a part, not the entire part. So let's say you have a moderate credit score and your yearly income is high and you have a lot of years to also work and you don't have any debt attached to your name right now, and what else? You don't have any cards. Of course, you should be able to score above 70, which means you'll be able to pay back this loan or debt. So for we have the credit score. So we're looking at the credit score. This should now be, we're simply going to say max, right? Max, then all. The first one is the credit score. So we're saying our users data. We're looking at the credit score. Yeah, credit score. So the first is the credit score. So we're just taking the highest credit score. There's something we want to do with it when creating this model-like measure we're writing. So one of the next factor we want to look at is your active years. Your active years, which means if you have a lot of time to work, there's a chance you'll be able to pay this money. So we're looking at your active years. We're looking at your active years. This is looking at your active years also. Is the next factor we want to look at, active years, and we're saying all users, that's your active years. First users, users, then active years. So we're looking at the active years is another factor we want to consider. What's another factor we want to consider? Another is your yearly income. So if you have a high yearly income, your yearly income is going to contribute to your overall score also. So yearly income. So yearly income is going to contribute to that also. So your yearly income. What other factor will contribute to this? We're looking at we've looked at your credit score, your active years, your yearly income. We want to look at your debt. Do you currently have any debt attached to you? Debt. Do you currently have any debt attached to you? Of course, if you already have high debt, we don't want to give you more money. That means your chances of paying back the credit, it's going to be difficult. So we won't want to give you more. So we want to also consider that, right? Then finally, one more factor we're going to consider is the credit card you have. Do you have up to 10 credit cards already or 6 already? So if you have more than probably 2, we don't want to give you more like that. So we are looking at the card. We're looking at the card. So remember, in our data, we have the number of credit card already. number of credit cards. Some individuals have 0 credit cards, some already have up to 6 credit cards already. So we don't want to give those people more credit card. So these are the factors we've identified, right? These are the factors we've identified. These are the factors we want to consider to calculate the overall chances of you paying back this credit we're giving to you, this loan we're giving to you. So simply want to return. So first thing we need to do, open a bracket, right? And we'll say, you know what? Now we want to consider the factors. So this is where it becomes tricky. We then assign priority scores, weights. Now, out of 100%, what percent, or out of 100, what is the number we want to give to credit score? What is the priority we want to give to credit score? We can say now, for credit score, we want to give credit score a priority of 20. So we want to measure credit score by 20, which means if you have a very, very high credit score, you can actually get 20 over 100. You already have 20 over 100. Let's say if you have a credit score that is a bit fair, that means from the calculation from the model will automatically give you maybe like 15 over 20 already, or 10 over 20, just like that. So this is going to be our credit score, right? And we're going to be dividing this by the max credit score, which is the max score. So remember, I said we want to assign a weight of what? 20. We want to measure this by 20. This should only come into play 20%. You take 20% of your overall mark. So remember, we're measuring your risk score over 20, your percentage, the chances of you, which is more like your score, the chances that you return it. If you are having 80%, that means 80% chance. If you're having a score of 80, that means 80% of the time you're going to be able to pay back the loan. So the next thing we want to also consider is your yearly income. Yeah, we want to assign weight to your yearly income. Your yearly income now, we're looking at, if you have, of course, a high yearly income, that automatically means to an extent you should be able to pay back this credit card that you're about to take. So we're looking at the yearly income. Now, what is the weight we want to assign to the yearly income? The yearly income, we want to assign a weight of 25%. So we want to say the yearly income should take 25%, which is 20. It should take 25. Yearly income should take 25. If you have a high yearly income, or you are a high income earner, that means we should measure that over 25. So you can, let's say you are the highest earner, that means you already have 25, because we're looking at it that if you are earning high, that means you should be able to pay back the money. Now, this is where it becomes trickish. Let's look at your debt. You currently have debt. Some people have debt already in the system. Yes, if you have a low debt, we'll still give you some more, give you room, right? We can give you another credit card. But if you have already high debt and you're unable to pay, of course, if you have a high debt, we don't want to give you more money. You get? So now, this is going to work in reverse, because what is happening here for credit score is the higher your credit score, the higher you get close to 20. The higher your yearly income, the higher you get close to 25, right? But in terms of debt, the higher you go in terms of debt, right, the lower you're going to get to the weight we're going to assign to debt. So for debt, we're going to assign a weight of 25. So what I'm basically saying is, we're not going to have something like this. We're going to say 1 minus, then we're going to divide. Now, we're looking at debt, the total debt by the max debt, and we want to assign a weight of 25 to this. So this is the implication of what we've done. We're simply saying, if you have a high debt already, your score over 25, it will be around 2 or 3. But if you have zero debt, good. So for individuals that are having zero debt already, we saw it. Some people are having zero debt. That's why we saw zero debt to income ratio. They're having zero debt. That person having zero debt, applying for a credit card automatically means the person has a score of 25 already. 25% chance already that is going to bring back the loan. So other factors that will now factor in to see how close it will get, he will get to the threshold. Maybe the threshold, the benchmark is 70. Those having 70 score and above are people who want to give more credit card to, that people will consider to give credit card. So this person already have 25 over the 70 already. So other factors will not be what we play in, right? Other factors will be what we play in. Factors like his yearly income, his current credit score and all that, that's what we play in. So this is working in reverse. So the higher your debt, the lower your score over 25. If you have zero debt, the lower your debt, the higher your score close to 25. That's why we're having the negative 1 minus the value there. So next, we're also going to be looking at what again? Another thing that is using this same principle is the number of credit card, right? If you have a high number of credit card, that means what is the priority we're going to give to credit card? Let's say we're going to give credit card a weight of 10. So if you have let's say you have 6 credit card, you're automatically going to get like 1. Over 10, you're going to have 1 because you have a high number of credit card already. So this is looking at credit card, number of credit card. This is looking at number of credit card, and we're assigning a weight of what again? Of 10% or 10. Then finally, for our last variable, which is our last factor, which is your active years. So we want to give that a weight of 20, a score of 20, which means if you have a long active years, there's a chance that you should be able to pay the money. So we are now going to say for active years, we also want to say, okay, yeah, this individual should be able to pay the money we are giving to him or her. This should be simply divide now. We're now going to divide. We're looking at active years, right? Active years, max active years, which is max here. Wait, close brackets. So we're going to give this a weight of 20. So this would be it. And finally, so now we've written this measure is more like a model, machine learning model, but no, it's not a machine learning model. It's just a model that we're putting in place to say, okay, we're assigning weight to these factors, automatically calculate the risk score. The risk score, like I said, is more like what is the chances that this person will be able to pay back the loan. And this is going to be measured over 100. So by then, we can then create a bucket to say if you are less than 50, that means there's a low chance. If you're between 50 and 70, you're likely to be able to, but if you're above 70, that means you're good, you'll be able to pay back. So I'll just commit this and let's see what will happen. Great, so now you can actually see that we've been able to calculate the risk score, like I said. So let's quickly see how it looks like. So you can see we have values from 34 to, it's more than 56 actually. You can see somebody is having a risk of 70, which means this person is going to, there's a good chance this person should be able to pay back the loan. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to filter by someone, right? I'm going to filter by this individual having a risk score of 34. Let's see what happens. Let's look at the factors we considered, right? One of the factors we considered is active years, right? So let's look at it from the beginning. So this is the year. Okay, so look at the yearly income of this individual. It's very low, 24,000. That's what this individual is currently earning yearly. But that's fine. But look at the total debt. It's actually 889, which means, of course, he's earning high, he's earning low, but his debt is actually very low. Now, the interesting thing, he has a very high credit score, right? But he already has 9 credit cards to his name. 9 credit cards to his name. So somebody having 9 credit cards, why do you want to give the person more credit card? Now, see where the problem lies. He's actually retired, which means, remember that retirement, which is your active years, contributes a lot to, what does that contribute? Your active years actually contribute 20%. 20%. So you see where this individual's problem is actually lying. He's retired, which means this is already 0. Active years out of 20 is, so he's working, he's fighting is fighting against 75. He's fighting against 75. Is it 75 now? Yeah, he's fighting against that's 75% already. He's struggling against 75% because active years is actually, let's confirm that. So active years is 20s. Yeah, which means he's struggling against 80%. He's working against 80% already because he's already retired. And that's minus 20 already for him. So he's working over 80. Now, if you now look at the number of credit cards he's having 9 credit cards already, which means 9 credit cards, we don't want to give you more. We don't want to give you more. We don't want to give you more, which means out of 10% credit card we contribute to it, he's going to get 1, which means he's now working hard. Then he's going to be really bad. Yes, he has a good credit score, but this is not the highest credit score. There are people that are actually having more than this, so I think there are people that are having more credit score, better credit score than this. Then if you look at his debt already having debt, and he's not having, his yearly income is actually really low. So these are the factors that are actually affecting him, and he's likely not to get the loan. If he applies for anyone, he's not going to get it because his risk score, the chances of him paying back the loan is actually 34%. Okay, so I think one of the things we can do is look at, can we get someone that is a bit higher, and let's look at how our model is working. So let's see somebody that is actually having 55 or so, right? Let's see 55. Don't worry, we'll get to see someone that is having 55. 55. Let's look at, so this person, his yearly income is 46. Oh damn, he's already owing more than his yearly income, which is bad. His credit score, okay, 696. Then look at his number of credit card, 3. His active years is 20. Yeah, although it's 20, so you can see how the factors are actually working for him, and he's actually 55, which is, it's just 55 there. I don't know, maybe that's it's not really so good chances that he's going to be able to pay back the loan. So one thing we'll do is create a bucket, right? We'll go ahead and create a bucket for this again. So I'll just say new column, right? So we'll create a bucket for this, then we should be able to see those that are having a high and good credit score, that we can say those people are people that are going to be able to pay back the loan. So what we'll just do, we just say loan risk category or loan risk cat. Then we're also going to be using our switch function like we've always done. So now remember, like I said, a high credit score, right? 70 and above means automatically means low risk in this case. Low risk in the sense that this person, there's a high chance is going to pay back. But if you're having a low number, it's reverse. A low number means it's high risk. There's a high chance this person is not going to pay back. So what we're simply saying now is we're looking at our risk score. If the risk score, right, if it's less than 50, this is actually very high risk. It's high risk. Let's just say high risk, like let's say high risk. So for those that are less than 50, it's high risk because there's a chance they are not going to be able to pay back this credit card. You should give it to them. Now, we're now looking at those that are having, so we're looking at those that are having risk score, right? Risk score that are greater than 50, right? Greater than or equal to 50 now, not just greater than 50. Greater than or equal to 50, right? And this same risk score is less than or equal to 60. Yeah, these are moderate. So it's more like moderate risk. Moderate risk. The reason is moderate risk is because let's say 50 is the threshold, right? Above 50%. You know, before now we always say above 50% is okay. But now we're saying between 50 and 60. If your score is between 50 and 60, it's moderate risk, which means there's 50 to 60% chance that you'll be able to pay back the credit card. Now, anybody having from 61% upward, we want to say, yeah, this is low risk because 60%, 61% upward means this person is going to be able to pay back the money. So we'll say this is low risk. So remember, we are also going to create a bucket for this so we can sort from high to low or low to high. So I'm just going to copy this switch once more, then I'm going to commit this. I'm getting an error, so there's something wrong somewhere. Let's quickly check. Something is wrong. So yeah, I missed true. So I'm supposed to say switch true and put a comma. So that should take care of it. Great. So you can see we have the loan, that's the risk category now. We have the risk category here already. So now that we have the risk category, let's go filter to low risk. You remember, individuals that are having low risk are people that are actually having score above 61. So let's just look at one of the low risk persons. Let's say low risk and see how low the risk. So we have 62, 62, 62, 62. Let's look at this 62. That's the first person there is 62. Let's see what happens. So for that 62, his yearly income is actually $30,000. Now the total debt already is 67,000. Interesting. But he's having a very high credit score. Remember, credit score contributes about, is it 20 or to 30%? 20, I think 20 or 25. Then the debt already is a problem, but let's see, this is not the only factors we're considering. Then you can see the number of credit card is 3. Let's see, what's the highest number of credit card we have here? We actually have more than 6. I think so. Okay, we have 6. I think somebody is having 9 also. Can't tell. So let's look at his active years. Oh, this individual is actually having 40 years active years to work, which means, okay, he'll be able to pay back active years. So what other factor are we looking at again? What other factors? So those are the factors the model has been able to figure it out that, okay, you see this person, there is a low risk, which means is 62% score, which means 62% is going to pay back, be able to return back the money. That's just the principle we are applying. So like I said, we're also going to create a sort for this. So I'm just going to create a new column. Okay, new column, new column. So I'll paste the code, and this should now be loan risk sort. Then we can actually sort it in any order. So this can be 1. This should then be 2. And finally, this should be 3. Great. So we'll just commit this and we'll sort. We're getting an error. Yeah, remember, I forgot to add the true. So I'll add the true here, the comma. So this should take care of it. Great, so we have it sorted. So now we only need to select the loan risk category, right? That we created and say sort column, sorted by loan risk sort. So I need to correct the spelling. Is loan risk sort. Great. So let's quickly navigate back to the report view. So with this, I think we've created the measures and everything we need to actually go ahead to create the first page of the report. Let's quickly navigate back to the report we're trying to create here. So we have the client, we have everything we need to create the KPI cards, we have everything we need to create the charts already. We have everything we need to create the chart and everything. So now we'll simply just quickly go to PowerPoint and create this UI background, bring it to Power BI and start adding our charts visuals to create the first and second page of the report, I guess. So stay with me. So now let's go to PowerPoint and see how we can create the UI background for the report.